President William Ruto international engagements and the impact of domestic challenges. Since assuming office, President William Ruto has demonstrated a dynamic and assertive approach to international diplomacy, making frequent trips to various countries across different continents. These trips are not mere ceremonial visits, but are strategically aimed at strengthening Kenya's global ties, securing vital partnerships, and positioning Kenya as a key player in international affairs. Ruto's foreign engagements have been driven by a clear vision to bolster Kenya's economic, political, and social standing on the global stage, whether through negotiating trade agreements, attracting foreign investment, or advocating for global cooperation on issues such as climate change and regional security. However, Ruto's robust international agenda has faced significant challenges, particularly during periods of domestic turmoil. At times, intense domestic issues, most notably widespread nationwide protests, have forced the president to put his international engagements on hold. These protests, often sparked by public dissent against government policies or economic conditions, have necessitated Ruto's presence within the country to manage the crises and address the concerns of the Kenyan populace. This contrast between his active international presence and the periods of being grounded due to domestic challenges underscores the delicate balance Ruto must maintain between fulfilling his international responsibilities and managing internal affairs. This analysis delves into the dual nature of Ruto's presidency, where his international diplomatic efforts are juxtaposed against the backdrop of domestic unrest. It examines the significance of his overseas trips, particularly during times when he has been free to travel and engage with global leaders, and how these trips have contributed to Kenya's strategic objectives. Additionally, the analysis explores the impact of domestic instability on Ruto's ability to conduct foreign diplomacy, highlighting how internal challenges have, at times, curtailed his capacity to participate in international forums and advance Kenya's interests on the global stage. Through this exploration, we gain insight into the complexities of leading a nation that is simultaneously navigating the demands of both domestic and international arenas. Ruto's recent trips and strategic importance. On September 1, 2024, President William Ruto embarked on a critical diplomatic mission to Beijing, China, marking a significant moment in his administration's foreign policy agenda. This visit was centered around the 9th Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC Summit, a pivotal event that serves as the cornerstone of China-Africa relations. The FOCAC Summit is known for fostering deep, strategic ties between China and African nations, focusing on mutual interests such as infrastructure development, trade, economic cooperation, and a host of other bilateral agreements. Given the growing influence of China in Africa, the summit provides a crucial platform for African leaders to negotiate deals that can spur economic growth and development in their respective countries. President Ruto's participation in this summit carries particular significance as it marks his first major international engagement outside the African continent in 2 months. This period of absence from the global stage was largely due to a wave of domestic unrest that had gripped Kenya, characterized by widespread protests against his government's policies. One of the key anticipated outcomes is the creation of new job opportunities for Kenyans, a priority that aligns closely with Ruto's bottom-up economic transformation agenda. This agenda is aimed at empowering the lower and middle income segments of the population by creating jobs, enhancing skills, and boosting economic activities at the grassroots level. By securing investments and agreements during the FOCAC Summit, Ruto aims to catalyze job creation in sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, and infrastructure, which are critical to Kenya's long-term economic growth. In addition to job creation, the discussions between President Ruto and Chinese President Xi Jinping, along with other African leaders, are expected to further solidify Kenya's strategic partnership with China. The focus of these discussions spans several vital sectors, including agriculture, healthcare, and infrastructure. areas where Chinese investment and expertise can make a substantial impact. For instance, infrastructure development remains a cornerstone of Kenya's economic agenda, and projects such as the extension of the Standard Gauge Railway, SGR, the construction of rural roads, and the establishment of a pharmaceutical park are all on the table for negotiation. These projects are not only critical for enhancing Kenya's connectivity and healthcare capabilities, but also for driving broader economic growth and regional integration. The outcomes of the FOCAC summit are anticipated to include the adoption of the Beijing Declaration by the heads of state and government, a document that will outline the shared vision and commitments of China and African nations for the next phase of their cooperation. Additionally, an action plan for the period between 2025 and 2027 is expected to be agreed upon, detailing specific areas of collaboration and investment. This plan is likely to cover a wide range of initiatives aimed at boosting economic ties, enhancing technological exchange, and addressing common challenges such as climate change and food security. In essence, President Ruto's trip to China is more than just a diplomatic engagement. It is a strategic move to secure long-term benefits for Kenya. By actively participating in the FOCAC summit, Ruto is positioning Kenya to tap into the vast opportunities presented by China's growing influence in Africa. The agreements and partnerships forged during this visit could play a pivotal role in advancing Kenya's development goals, particularly in infrastructure, healthcare, and job creation, thereby contributing to the overall prosperity and stability of the nation. Contrasting period diplomacy and domestic challenges, the significance of President Ruto's recent travels is thrown into sharp relief when juxtaposed with the period in which he was effectively grounded due to intense domestic challenges. Before embarking on his recent diplomatic missions to Rwanda and China, Ruto was confined to Kenya for nearly a month, a strikingly unusual scenario for a leader who has built a reputation for his active and frequent international engagements. This forced hiatus from global diplomacy highlights the profound impact that domestic instability can have on a leader's ability to conduct international affairs, especially in a country where the president's presence is often deemed crucial during times of crisis. The domestic protests that kept Ruto grounded were primarily fueled by widespread economic grievances and public opposition to government policies, most notably the highly controversial Finance Bill 2024. This bill proposed a series of tax increases and other fiscal measures that were intended to shore up government revenues, but were seen by many Kenyans as punitive. Particular presence was needed to manage the crisis, quell the unrest, and demonstrate a hands-on approach to governance at a time when public confidence in his administration was being severely tested. The finance bill, which initially seemed like a necessary step to address fiscal deficits, quickly turned into a political lightning rod. The opposition to the bill was not confined to the usual political rivals, but spread across a broad spectrum of society, including civil society groups, labor unions, and ordinary citizens who felt that the proposed measures would exacerbate their economic hardships. The intensity of the opposition forced Ruto to reassess his position, and ultimately he made the decision to withdraw the bill, a move that, while politically necessary, underscored the extent of the pressure he was under. This period of domestic upheaval highlighted the delicate balance that President Ruto must strike between managing internal affairs and fulfilling his international obligations. As a leader, Ruto faces the constant challenge of being both a national figurehead, responsive to the immediate needs and concerns of his people, and a global diplomat, tasked with advancing Kenya's interests on the international stage. The protests made it clear that, in times of domestic crisis, the demands of internal governance can overshadow and even impede international diplomacy. Ruto's enforced absence from the global stage during this period is particularly significant in light of his usual pattern of frequent travel and active participation in international forums. His inability to engage in international diplomacy during the protests meant that critical opportunities for Kenya to influence global discussions Secure investments and negotiate bilateral agreements were potentially lost or delayed. This hiatus from the international arena may have had short-term implications for Kenya's global standing, as well as for Ruto's ability to pursue his broader strategic goals. However, this period also served as a reminder of the inherent interconnectedness of domestic and international politics. A leader's effectiveness on the global stage is often contingent upon the stability and support they command at home. For Ruto, the protests underscored the importance of addressing domestic issues decisively and effectively to maintain the political capital necessary for international diplomacy. It also highlighted the need for a flexible approach to governance, where the immediate demands of internal crises are balanced with long-term strategic goals in foreign policy. The contrast between Ruto's active international diplomacy and the period when he was grounded due to domestic protests illustrates the significant impact that internal instability can have on a leader's ability to engage globally. This period of domestic turmoil not only disrupted Ruto's international agenda, but also highlighted the challenges of navigating the dual responsibilities of domestic governance and international diplomacy. As Ruto continues to lead Kenya through a complex and often turbulent political landscape, his ability to manage these competing demands will be crucial in determining the success of his administration, both at home and abroad. A pattern of strategic international engagement. Despite facing significant domestic challenges, President William Ruto's commitment to international diplomacy has remained a central pillar of his administration's broader strategy. From the outset of his tenure, Ruto has demonstrated a keen focus on engaging with the global community, recognizing that Kenya's prosperity and security are inextricably linked to its relationships with other nations. His numerous trips abroad and global stage, his attendance at key summits like the G7 in Italy and the Peace Summit on Ukraine in Switzerland, highlights his commitment to positioning Kenya as an influential voice in international affairs. The G7 summit, in particular, provided Ruto with a platform to engage with the world's most powerful economies, advocating for policies that support sustainable development and global economic stability. Similarly, his involvement in the Peace Summit on Ukraine underscored Kenya's willingness to participate in global peace building efforts, aligning the country with international efforts to resolve conflicts and promote stability. Ruto's engagement with global forums extends beyond these summits. His participation in the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, and the COP27 climate conference exemplifies his administration's focus on addressing some of the most pressing global challenges. At the UNGA, Ruto has consistently advocated for policies that support economic development, social justice, and global cooperation, while at COP27, he has positioned Kenya as a leader in the fight against climate change, emphasizing the need for urgent and coordinated global action to address environmental degradation and its impacts on vulnerable populations. While Ruto's global engagements are significant, his focus on regional diplomacy within Africa is equally noteworthy. He has placed particular emphasis on strengthening ties within the East African Community, EAC, a regional bloc that is central to Kenya's economic and security interests. By actively participating in EAC meetings and summits, Ruto has worked to deepen regional integration, enhance trade and investment flows, and address common security challenges such as cross-border terrorism and instability. His efforts to strengthen ties with neighboring countries have been instrumental in fostering a more cohesive and stable regional environment, which is essential for Kenya's own prosperity and security. In addition to his work within the EAC, Ruto has also sought to build stronger bilateral relationships with other African nations. His state visits to countries like Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda have focused on enhancing economic cooperation, promoting infrastructure development, and coordinating efforts to address shared challenges such as food security and health crises. These visits have often resulted in the signing of bilateral agreements that pave the way for increased trade, investment, and collaboration in key sectors, contributing to the broader goal of economic growth and development across the continent. Ruto's travel pattern reveals a deliberate and strategic emphasis on both regional and global engagements, each serving different but complementary purposes. His regional focus on Africa, particularly the EAC, is driven by the recognition that Kenya's immediate neighborhood plays a crucial role in its economic and security landscape. Strengthening regional ties and addressing common challenges helps to create a more stable and prosperous environment, which in turn supports Kenya's national interests. Globally, Ruto's participation in forums like the United Nations General Assembly and COP27 has allowed Kenya to assert itself as an active player in addressing global challenges. By engaging in these international platforms, Ruto has positioned Kenya as a country that not only contributes to global solutions, but also benefits from the collective efforts of the international community. His focus on issues like climate change, food security, and sustainable development reflects a recognition that these global challenges have direct implications for Kenya's future and that international cooperation is essential for addressing them. Ruto's international engagements, despite the domestic challenges he faces, are a testament to his administration's strategic vision for Kenya. By balancing regional and global priorities, Ruto has worked to secure Kenya's place on the world stage while also addressing the immediate needs and concerns of the region. His diplomatic efforts, whether through participation in global summits or through targeted bilateral engagements, are designed to advance Kenya's economic, security, and developmental goals, ensuring that the country remains an active and influential player in the international community. Conclusion: President William Ruto's international trips, particularly his recent visit to China, underscore the strategic importance of his global engagements for Kenya's economic and diplomatic goals. However, the periods when he has been grounded due to domestic challenges reveal the constraints that internal instability can impose on a leader's ability to fulfill international obligations. As Ruto continues to navigate the complex landscape of both domestic and international politics, his ability to balance these demands will be crucial for his administration's success in achieving its goals, both at home and abroad. However good the international trips are, President Ruto should also understand that he is not an overseas president.